Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, I am your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning. We've got a busy show this morning. We are going to be talking with Matthew Buzzetti. He is running for Chemung County Family Court Judge. We're also going to hear from Shena Rossettie. Shena Rossettie is part of the group called Twin Tiers Family Forum that is holding the New York State Constitutional Amendment Prop 1 public awareness meeting, and that is today at 6 p.m., at the American Legion in South Corning. You'll get to hear from Bobby Ann Cox, Esquire, and New York State Senator George Borrello. So do not miss that tonight. I know a lot of people have questions on Prop 1 that will be up for a vote in November, right around the corner, or October 26th if you want to start voting early. So we'll find out about that, and we'll find out about tonight's public forum. Thank you for the waves coming in. We are going to talk a little bit here about Hurricane Milton on its way. First, yesterday, and I don't think this will come as a surprise, as this is something we've covered so extensively on the program, but yes, there were thousands of, I don't even know how you could use the word protesters, almost celebrating the 1-year anniversary of that horrific October 7th attack on Israel, as if commemorating the 1-year anniversary of the worst single-day massacre of Jews since the Holocaust wasn't harrowing enough. According to Liel Lebovitz from New York Post, we American Jews were threatened Monday to a reminder that the marauders who want us dead are alive and well in New York City. There they were in Times Square and in Grand Central and Columbus Circle and elsewhere in the greatest city on earth, chanting for Hamas, Hezbollah, and other death cults committed to raping, kidnapping, and killing Israelis, Americans, and Jews. There they were on American soil, cheering for the monsters who still hold 4 American citizens in captivity. There they were, promising to globalize the Intifada and bring the bloodshed that is their only true passion to these shores as well. Watching these thugs, many of my friends felt distraught. How, they wondered, could such hatred flourish here in America? And why were the bullies permitted to carry on with their intimidation, turning our solemn day of remembrance into one of fear and loathing and expressing their admiration for organizations our government has long ago classified as terrorist groups? Now, Liel Lebovitz says that they don't necessarily, this author doesn't necessarily agree with her friends that were scared, saying, I believe in America, I believe in American exceptionalism, and I believe that the jaunty little jihadists marching down the block are precisely the sort of wake-up call this great but slumbering nation needs to stretch its limbs and leap into the next big fight for freedom. You hardly need to be Jewish or a political scientist to realize that the so-called pro-Palestinian crowd isn't really all that interested in Palestine. Their main goal is America, the lone bastion of Western civilization, which is why they strategically chose all-American events like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade or the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting ceremony. If you recall last year, that's where they caused their mayhem. Finishing here, because it's just an update from yesterday, and unfortunately we had suspected there'd be thousands of anti-Israel, anti-American, anti-police, again, I don't know if protesters are the right word, agitators that would come out in full force yesterday. But as Lebovitz says, the barbarians are at the gates. That's bad news. But here's the good news. So are we. And I see CBS this morning had to apologize in a way because the host took a strong stance. Tony, sorry I don't watch, Dokopil, got tough grilling author Tanisha Coates about the controversial author's pro-Palestinian framing of Hamas's war with Israel. So because the host was pushing back and taking a what you could call a pro-Israel stance, CBS and CBS morning staffers started a backlash, saying it went against the network's commitment to truth. CBS News boss Winnie McCann and Adrian Rourke, the president of the content development for the news division, claimed the CBS Mornings host brought his own bias to the interview with Coates during meeting with workers on the one-year anniversary of the October 7th massacre. Well, why would you have that specific interview on October the 7th if you didn't expect some pushback? They said the sit-down conducted last week by Doak Pill and co-anchors, Gail King and Nate Burleson, did not meet editorial standards for impartiality, though they declined to provide any details. Do you feel that CBS Mornings, or in general, is always looking to meet some type of editorial standard for impartiality? Quote, we still hold people accountable, but we do so objectively, which means checking our biases and opinions at the door. We were here to report news without fear or favor. Take that for whatever it's worth. So there you go. So it's not just in the streets protesting. It's this kind of, well, as Van Jones said, the marbling in the Democrat Party of kind of anti-Semitism, and we've heard about staffs having a backlash when there has been kind of a pro-Israel stance taken at various companies and organizations. Okay, another piece of breaking news, if you will. American Water Works, a supplier of drinking water and wastewater services to more than 14 million people, said on Monday that hackers had breached its computer networks and systems, prompting it to pause billing to customers. We had broadcast this fear that this would become more prevalent. We've heard of instances where hackers in China were looking at the infrastructure when it comes to water, sewer, because it's something that almost goes overlooked. You may not have the security precautions that you should, because so many of these things, of course, run by computers. The Camden, New Jersey-based utility became aware of the unauthorized activity on Thursday and took protective steps, including shutting down certain systems. American Water Works stated in a regulatory filing. The company does not believe its facilities or operations were impacted by the cybersecurity incident, but is, quote, currently unable to predict the full impact. And if you think about it when it comes to wastewater, or think about it when it comes to the fresh water in the cities, it's not just about perhaps stopping the water flow. It's also about how they can mix the chemicals into it in a dangerous fashion. Quote, in an effort to protect our customers' data and to prevent any further harm to our environment, we disconnected or deactivated certain systems. There will be no late charges for customers while these systems are unavailable. The company is working around the clock to investigate the nature and scope of the incident. The company said it had notified law enforcement and is cooperating with them. According to its website, American Water is the largest regulated water and wastewater utility company in the United States and provides drinking water and wastewater services to more than 14 million people in 14 states and on 18 military installations. The real fear of this, and again, it's something that we talked about in the past, is something to not take lightly. The damage, and a lot of times when they are caught in this way, you wonder if it's just a test, if it's just to see what they can quote unquote get away with. U.S. officials have recently become concerned about alleged work by Chinese intelligence officers to breach critical U.S. infrastructure networks, such as water treatment facilities, and tied a cyber attack targeting U.S. broadband providers to the government in Beijing. The Wall Street Journal reported late Friday, citing people familiar with the matter. So not to scare you at the beginning of this Tuesday morning edition of Frankly Speaking, but it's also something that we need to be made aware of. We need to be vigilant and keep an eye on, because the implications right there stopped relatively quickly. But was it just a test case? Was it to see what they would notice and what they would not? Okay, we can talk about Hurricane Milton, if you would like. The Tampa mayor issuing a dire warning before Hurricane Milton that if you choose to stay, you are going to die. Pretty forceful statement there. Let me quote Mayor Jane Castor again. If you choose to stay, you are going to die. A literally catastrophic Category 5 hurricane that's barreling towards the Sunset State's coast. The powerful storm could hit Florida as early as Wednesday and may be more destructive the deadly Hurricane Helena, which ripped through parts of the Sunshine State just last week. Castor emphasized the attempt to ride out the storm could prove fatal. The time to flee is now, she urged residents. Quote, I could tell you right now, they might have done that in others. There's never been one like this. And it was a wake-up call, and this is literally catastrophic. As I can say without any dramatization whatsoever, if you choose to stay in one of those evacuation areas, you're going to die. Now, this is obviously the second natural disaster to hit Florida in 2 weeks, and is expected to make landfall as a Category 3 as early as tomorrow. It will likely deal its worst destruction to coastal communities, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said he can't see any scenario where we don't have major impacts. Florida is attempting its largest evacuation in years. The National Guard will have 8,000 troops on the ground per DeSantis. President Joe Biden declared a state of emergency on Florida just yesterday, which primed FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security to send federal disaster relief. Meanwhile, Floridians and soldiers are racing to clean up debris from before it can get swept up and cause more harm. Now, we're running a little bit late. Got some waves coming in. Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, did you see she stormed out of a briefing room after accusing a reporter of spreading misinformation about the hurricane response? Fox News reporter Peter Doocy asked Jean-Pierre to explain why the Harris-Biden administration had nearly $157 million at the ready to assist displaced people and refugees in Lebanon, but needs to beg Congress for additional funding for the Federal Emergency Management Agency as FEMA faces a shortfall. And we learned about that shortfall last week. We talked about it quite extensively on this program. The White House spokeswoman said, "We've taken this very seriously, more than $200 million that we have provided to the impacted areas. But instead, people want to do disinformation, misinformation, which is dangerous." When Doocy asked what the lack of additional funding for FEMA, noted by President Biden in a recent letter to congressional leaders, but available funds for Lebanon says about Biden's values, Jean-Pierre again charged that this question was misinformation. It's been a while since we've heard misinformation. Your whole premise of the question is misinformation, sir. Doocy wasn't having it. He shot back, saying, "Excuse me? Yes, it's misinformation. I just mentioned to you that we provided more than $200 million to folks who are impacted in that area. The Congress should, and Biden had said that the Congress should provide FEMA additional resources to avoid forcing that kind of unnecessary trade-off." Doocy asked if Jean-Pierre would agree that Biden's letter was not, in fact, misinformation. No, the way you're asking me the question is misinformation. There's money that we are allocating to the impacted areas, and there's money there to help people who truly need it. The Fox News reporter then argued, "You can't call a question that you don't like misinformation. That's very unfair." Well, I mean, it's pretty common. That's nothing new, and that may be one of the reasons, because she's kind of been an embattled press secretary. Biden has promoted Karine Jean-Pierre to senior advisor, despite struggles as press secretary's shadowy effort to perhaps remove her. Jean-Pierre's new position was held by highly influential figures credited with significant policy contributions under past presidents, including Jared Kushner with Donald Trump, David Axelrod with Barack Obama, and Karl Rove with George W. Bush. Karine has been a trusted advisor to the president and all of us here at the White House since day one. Her counsel will be critical to get as much done as possible for the American people in the coming months, it was reported on. The new title likely does not include a pay raise. She already earns $180,000 per year, the same as current senior advisors. She'll also have no changes in her job responsibilities as she continues to serve as press secretary. The senior advisor honorifics, quote, "mean nothing and are a joke," a former White House official told the Post. Oof. All right. There's a couple quick updates. How about that to start off the program? How much news can you pack in 13 minutes? Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. What a beautiful morning, a chilly morning, a fall morning here on Market Street. It's good to have the roof cam back, isn't it? So we're talking about the various hurricane relief. Did you see, this is, I think, an exclusive to the New York Post. Hundreds of special operations personnel in North Carolina have formed their own homegrown rescue and supply operation in the aftermath of the hurricane after they grew tired of waiting for the federal government to get its act together. And we heard of criticism from Elon Musk and others that Pete Buttigieg was basically saying, no, you can't have private drones. Remember, we brought that story to you last week to bring supplies and baby formula because it has to be a government response. Well, the Post found an all-volunteer operation being run out of a Harley-Davidson dealership with ruthless efficiency and military precision. Ex-Green Beret Adam Smith, when asked a question by the Post, said, "Who's FEMA?" This disaster has definitively proven, without a shadow of the doubt, FEMA's incompetence and incapability, he said, noting that the agency didn't even show up until Thursday, almost a week after the storm that has killed at least 232 people, nearly half of them in the west of the Tar Heel state. Unwilling to stand idly by after feeling his community was languishing with inadequate support, Smith enlisted the help of a few good men and women to take matters into their own hands. The Harley-Davidson dealership has become a forward operating base, complete with a fleet of 35 helicopters that have flown hundreds of rescue, reconnaissance, I always have trouble with that word, and resupply missions. Organizers are calling the effort the Savage Freedoms Relief Operation, but now they've proudly adopted the alternative moniker, the Redneck Air Force. The dealership teams with current and former soldiers, decked out in camo pants and army boots, with handguns strapped to their chests and hips, crop dusting pilots, helicopter tour guides, and special operations pilots, most of them off-duty or retired military, have answered the call from Smith and others in North Carolina's extensive military community. They're using their own aircrafts to fly doctors, medicine, generators, fuel, and food to isolated residents cut off from the world by the unprecedented floods, to washed out mountain roads and wiped entire towns off the map. Supplies and fuel for an operation this magnitude don't come cheap, but the group has relied entirely on donations, including around $190,000 raised through a GoFundMe page. Isn't this very kind of the epitome of America getting together? As you know, we talk on this program so often about community, and unfortunately what seems to be a lack of community spirit in many instances. And we had those polls when we first kicked off the program about a year and a half ago, talking about people losing faith in their community, faith in obviously politics. It's nice to see the community come together to help their neighbors, their friends and neighbors. There's interesting, if you want to find it for yourself, I think it was still up on the front page of the New York Post, but you can see all the pictures and what they are doing. The flights have been nearly constant during daylight hours. Now the effort has taken on a life of its own. Smith and others leading the operation have gone from cursing FEMA for its absence to hoping they never come back. Smith said that he fears their carefully calibrated rescue mission will be bogged down with government red tape if the feds show up, which is a very good point. Because again, remember, Pete Buttigieg demanded that drones be grounded at the very beginning for I'm not sure the reason, if ever one was stated, other than it's got to be government intervention. Nobody out here wants the federal agencies to come in. FEMA has walked into operation centers like this and has attempted to just take over and tell them that what they're doing is illegal and they're not allowed to keep doing it. I've seen it firsthand in this area, Smith said. My biggest fear is they'll move in the area, and in the process, they'll reinvent the wheel and rebuild this entire process. I have respectfully told FEMA individuals on a couple of different occasions, don't come to our location. We don't want your help, which FEMA should be saying, but they won't think this way because they are a bureaucracy. They are a government agency. Wait a minute. We seem to be cash strapped. Let's let these men and women do the job that they want to do. In just a few days, the Redneck Air Force is involved from surveying road damage and doing door-to-door on horseback to the military-scale operation that stands today. With the group's rescue operation now complete, they've turned their attention to flying supplies to communities cut off from communication and electricity. So you can find the full piece. I didn't mean to spend that much time, but I thought it was an amazing story, really the epitome of Americans getting together as a community and helping their friends and neighbors. We got a couple other things on the hurricanes. We do have a lot to talk about when it comes to the campaigns. I know Kamala Harris giving that 60 Minutes interview yesterday. Did you happen to see it? There's some criticism of some of her answers not really being answers, and some pushback from 60 Minutes demanding, for lack of a better word, some answers. Also, I can't remember who asked the question this morning, but I thought it was a good point. Who is Kamala Harris trying to reach with these interviews she's going to give this week? Stephen Colbert, Howard Stern. These seem like the audiences that podcast that she already has. These would be already voters of hers. So is this just another way to really skirt around doing hard-hitting interviews and press conferences? Though some would argue the 60 Minutes was hard-hitting. But not have to give the amount that a normal presidential candidate would. We'll give you some of the takeaways from that 60 Minutes interview if you missed it. If you did see it, what did you think? But we got to take a short break. Stay with us. Coming up a little bit later on, we're going to be talking with Shena Rossettie about the New York State Constitutional Amendment Prop 1 Public Awareness Meeting, which is tonight at 6 p.m. at the American Legion in South Corning. We'll also be talking with Mr. Matthew Buzzetti. He is running for Chemung County Family Court Judge. So, it's going to be a busy morning. I think it's going to, just as a warning, it's going to be a busy morning, I think, from here on out. Looking at my schedule, from here till November 5th, I think we're going to be pretty jam-packed. It's not just going to always be one interview a day. It could be numerous. So keep that in mind. You're not going to want to miss from now or ever, but from now until Election Day, every weekday morning at 6. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Beautiful view as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Couple of comments from viewers. First up, the biased media reporters should leave their bias at the door when reporting the news and are supposed to report only the truth. But when it comes to reporting on political issues, I guess they are exempt from this supposed policy. Good morning, by the way. Well, good morning. Yes, there is some very important truth there because that's really where these fact checks came about. They're trying to look as if they are doing their job, all while entrenching the interview with their political bias. So I think that's a very good point there. Oh, okay. Here's another comment from a viewer. When does early voting begin in New York, and where or how does it work? Is it mail-in? The lot to dissect there. Actually, we have a special coming up. I'm going to tell you the answer, but we do have the special coming up on Big Fox that we put together with the Board of Elections, with a Democrat representative, a Republican representative, just talking about how you can get involved in politics, early voting. So early voting starts in person on October 26th. But if you recall, and this is a little confusing for me, so bear with me. I'm going to do my best here. If you recall, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski talked about it last week, where there is this early voting, which is basically an absentee ballot that you don't have to have an excuse to be an absentee. It's really what Republicans didn't want throughout the country. Of course, New York, or I don't know if Democrats really wanted it. The Republicans kind of fought against it, but in New York, it wasn't implemented. So really, it's a mail-in absentee that they don't call an absentee. They call it early voting. But there is an early in-person voting, which starts on October 26th in Bath. And I have the headquarters. Well, it's going to be a part of the special. I didn't have print off, but I hope that's helpful. So you can get that early voting by mail if you contact them. But if you want to go in person, it starts on the 26th of October. Okay, let's go through a couple more comments. This one, yes, Ken, you really got to stop doing this to yourself. Ken did watch the 60 Minutes last night. And we appreciate it, and we thank you for your service, Ken, throughout this whole election season. But let's begin with what he had to say. Frank, I made the mistake of watching 60 Minutes last night, which had Harrison Walls on. My wife watched Dexter on the kitchen television while curiously sharpening her knives and incoherently talking under her breath. I'm starting not to say I can't blame her here, Ken. Harris didn't have any more info on her policies, and the knucklehead lied and talked mumbo jumbo, meaning the knucklehead is Walls, of course, is self-proclaimed. The interviewer pushed her a little on how she would pay for her buying voters plan. My words, not his. And the fact that the Biden-Harris administration quadrupled the amount of crossings of illegals into the country for each of the past 3 years, asking if she would have done anything differently. As usual, she answered with non-answers. It wasn't really an interview. It was more a Harris-Walls campaign event focused on trashing Trump. CBS focused on Trump accepting, then backing out of the interview. Yes, I saw that was a major story. Can you imagine, I guess, the lack of self-awareness that the media would be critical of Trump for that? After, listen, not me saying it. We had an op-ed not that long ago that said, imagine Trump goes to these outlets, gets called a fascist, but he's still criticized for not doing more interviews. Harris doesn't do any interviews, just recently starting putting on this blitz with friendly media. This would arguably be the toughest interview she's faced, and look at how it turned out. But yes, the focus was on Trump accepting an interview with that 60 Minutes and then backing away. How that's news when you have a presidential candidate who never received a single vote to be in that position, to be the candidate, the nominee. So you would think it would be encouraged to face more scrutiny. That is not the case. The media seems to be okay with the very small amount of interviews she's doing, and even praising up the media blitz that she's doing with all very friendly outlets. That podcast, you have 60 Minutes, arguably the toughest one, but then you have Howard Stern, who's been fawning over Democrats for quite some time now. You have Stephen Colbert, which of course is going to be friendly to her. You have The View as well, and I think that there may be another one or two. But thank you, Ken, for watching, and thank you for your update. Okay, we got a couple other ones, but I didn't have a chance to read them. Back to the hurricane. We are going to talk about 60 Minutes probably a little bit towards the end of the hour. When we take a break, when we come back, we're going to hear from Shena Rossettie about tonight's, because to that person that asked about early voting, this is going to be on the ballot in New York State, which is Prop 1. We've kind of simplified it by saying that for whatever this is worth, and I'm not suggesting this is, you do the research yourself. That's why you go to the thing tonight, the forum tonight at 6 o'clock at the American Legion South Corning to find out for yourself. But it's kind of been simplified down here, so I don't take up too much time. Republicans are saying no. Democrats are saying yes to the proposition. If you recall, a couple weeks back, I went through and kind of dissect all the legalese, all the wording of it, and it raises some very big red flags. We are actually going to have a couple experts on the program to talk about that after the forum. But I don't want to get too much into that because I want you to go to the forum tonight. Okay, one last thing. Vice President Harris took aim at Ron DeSantis yesterday for reportedly not taking her calls regarding federal storm relief efforts as a second powerful hurricane bears down on Florida. People are in desperate need of support right now, and playing political games at this moment in this crisis situation is just utterly irresponsible, and it's selfish. It's about political gamesmanship instead of doing the job that you took an oath to do, which is to put the people first. Asked about the reports at a hurricane news conference, DeSantis said he wasn't aware Harris tried to reach out. I didn't know that she had called. I'm not sure who they called. They didn't call me. It wasn't anything that anybody in my office did in terms of saying it was political. What a weird criticism of Harris. Well, I guess she's assuming that everything is political because everything to her is political. Asked about the federal response, DeSantis said during his news conference that we have gotten what we needed from the feds. The president has approved what we asked for. I'm thankful for that. Everything we asked for from President Biden, he's approved. So not really making it political. Harris making it political. We do have a couple other things that we may get to on this, but when we come back, we've got, I'm really looking forward to talking to Shena Rossettie. As I said a little bit later on the program, Matthew Buzzetti will be joining us. And then on tomorrow's show, we're going to be talking with Muriel Anderson. She's got a really neat story. She's a great guitarist. She is going to be in the area, and I'm hoping that I put up the right one here. She is going to be, nope, I did not, in the area. There it is. Marriage Music on Sunday at 2 p.m. Doors open at 1:30. And look, the money goes to benefit the flood victims in need. Why I'm so excited about this for numerous reasons is she was, as far as I can tell, good friends with our friend, Dwayne Eddy and Dwayne Eddy and his wife, Deed. So I'm looking forward to having a little chat with her about that. Okay, let's take that break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. I'm so glad that you would join us this morning to be on the show because so many people have questions about Prop 1. Have you found that?
I find that people mostly don't know about it, actually. You know, those who do or say, what is that about? And reading the language doesn't necessarily clarify it.
Yeah, not at all, actually. As I was mentioning off the air, we dedicated a show almost to it, and it's still as confusing as ever. So we're talking about the New York State Constitutional Amendment, Prop 1 Public Awareness Meeting, which is tonight at 6 p.m. at the American Legion. Why did you decide to hold this meeting?
So our forum is dedicated to helping provide information and social networking opportunities for Christian families and those who come alongside and help them. And this constitutional amendment, it has a huge impact, not just on the Christian family, but families throughout the state and really more broadly than that. So I was, sitting around thinking, well, surely somebody's going to do an event on this. This isn't just a Christian event. This is a really important voter awareness event. And then I leaned back and saw that nobody was doing it. So I decided to do it myself. And we're really opening it up to the whole community because we know that this is something that will impact everybody.
And I've got a feeling people that do know about it, that are aware, are probably pretty passionate about it, like your guest speakers specifically.
Yeah, I would say that anytime you have something that is a constitutional amendment, that should make you stand up and look and see what is this, because that's enshrining into the highest law of the state.
Right.
Something that presumably is of importance for the legislature to get involved in it. So our two speakers, so our event tonight is really first and foremost to help voters understand what's on the ballot.
Sure.
Secondly, we are taking a position, the speakers who are coming in are taking a position that this is not a good, that the vote should be no, that this amendment is not going to be good for the people of New York State. But the voter awareness is the first order of business. So our two speakers, Bobby Ann Cox is an attorney that's really become an expert on this amendment. She's traveling throughout the state speaking about it. She was actually the lead attorney in a case to keep the amendment off the ballot because of the way it was rushed through and the procedural steps that were not followed, it was said. So she won at the lower level. That unfortunately was overturned at the higher level. But she's very passionate about this constitutional amendment. And then matched up with her is Senator George Borrello. He's the state senator from the 57th district, just a little west of Hornell. It's a huge district.
Yes, it is.
So he's going to give kind of the background of how this amendment was put before the voters by a vote back in 2022 in the legislature. So he'll kind of explain how it came to be that this is in front of voters, and also what the trigger laws are that are sort of waiting to go into effect if it's passed. So he'll give the legislative angle.
Well, I know we've talked about it on the program because I think it was the New York Post has been reporting on this pretty effectively, but people don't even realize about the implications that could come from this, because it is kind of written in a generic way where you may be opening a can of worms that you were not prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, this language is cloaked in the language of anti-discrimination, but when you dig into it, it's creating these protected classes of people, and our position is that ultimately this is going to hurt people because the way it is being presented is really against the truth of who the human person is. So one that I think a lot of people would agree with, this idea of not discriminating based on age. Yeah. And yet throughout our laws we have discriminations, appropriately so, based on age. The more extreme ones relating to statutory rape, but you could think of prison sentencing, and we're tipping into areas around gender ideology that are being pushed on kids. But it's not just that area. Age is written throughout our law, that we treat people differently according to their needs. So that's an example of how something that's presented, of course we wouldn't want to discriminate about against somebody based on their age. And the reality is it could be, in this case, opening up a can of worms. So nobody likes the idea of discrimination. So let's get past that buzzword and see what this constitutional amendment is actually about, so that because the presumption when in having this meeting tomorrow, I presume everybody coming out wants the good of the human person. Sure. Regardless of your political position on this. If you're coming into this event, I have goodwill towards you. Our speakers are going to presume that you want to understand this, and that that we're all there for the bigger picture of serving the human person in our midst. So, how can we understand what this law might actually do if it's passed is kind of first and foremost at the top of our mind. But we're presuming that we all have the best intentions. So let's dig into the details.
Right. Do you find that people maybe struggle to go to events like this because of the political nature of things?
Definitely. Yeah. And so just a little background maybe about the Family Forum. We started in 2022, very informally. It was after COVID. And, I'm a mother of 6, and I have, they're all school aged at this point. So I know in my own life and among kind of the group, community that I'm in, there's so many conversations about how to raise our children, how to live out this unbelievable vocation of raising a family. And I have been involved in the past in mothers groups. I worked for a while at Nottinghood Parent Resource Center in Corning. I have a lot of passion around family development just in general in the community, but then my own life, it's important to me. So I was kind of hearing people asking questions about COVID, about and just not just mom groups, but like, let's get as many people involved in those conversations as possible.
Sure.
So we started doing these forums for moms and dads, but then anybody who wants to come alongside and help them. And we would talk about issues like mental health. That was a big concern coming out of COVID, and education. We did a variety of topics, and sort of the idea is, let's take this out of the no offense, but the media world.
Sure, none taken.
Discuss. Really important issues should not be discussed primarily on social media.
I agree.
We don't use social media at all, actually. These events are only done by direct invitation. I'll put flyers up sometimes, but the idea is personally invite people who are important in your life to come together and then personally talk about the reality on the ground in your community. So we try to redo a little research before our events to understand some of the local data. For example, on mental health, I tried to bring some of that local data to the conversation. But then we open it up. All right, let's talk about what this issue actually looks like in our community. Okay. Because whatever you might read online or read nationally, it's not relevant if it's not happening here.
Right.
So, getting coaches to come and getting educators to come alongside parents and talk about what they see from their angle is really important. So we always have the ground rules of we're here to talk about, facts and issues. We don't get into personal slurs. We have a presumption of goodwill at our meetings.
Sure.
Anything is up for conversation. It's a forum. That's the way these things work. As long as you are respectful of the human person. So we do, our goal is to help the Christian family in particular, because what I've noticed is that I'm a Catholic myself, and I've gone to, events to serve the family, broadly in secular society, which is really helpful. But there are some issues where the lens of our faith is really important to bring to bear.
Sure.
So we're kind of like a professional development opportunity for parents.
Okay.
That they
That's
can
a great
come
one. Yeah.
and all of those who want to help support those parents. So we have grandparents come, teachers, people in the community, and we set the stage for these things to happen, even when we're talking about controversial topics, which we have done before, but we do it in a way that I think that is respectful of everybody in the room. So,
how many forums do you think you've had through the years?
Well, since 2022, this will be our 10th.
Oh wow!
Yep.
Wow.
So we've had over 100 attendees overall, about 20 volunteers.
Okay.
So there's a crew.
Yeah.
And we kind of do one by one. We're like, all right, what are people talking about? What are the things that families really need more help and understanding?
Mm-hmm.
So it's been interesting. It's a great way to kind of get to know the community. And
Sure. Well, then we're talking about the New York State Constitutional Amendment, Prop 1, public awareness meeting tonight at 6 p.m. Again, I know we were just talking about it, but I learned about the prop, sadly, from going to the Steuben County Fair and seeing a sign up at the Republican booth that said vote no on the prop. And until then, I hadn't even really heard about it. Why do you think it's been so quiet?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You should come tonight to the meeting to find out. I have my guesses,
Yeah.
which is that, and this is, it's written in such a vague way that even to try to explain what it is challenging.
Yes.
And I think when something is a touch incoherent, it makes people less likely to want to dig into it. So we are going to dig into it, and even if the result, I think probably what we're going to talk about tonight is that because this amendment is so amorphous in a way, it'll ultimately be up to judges to interpret it,
Right.
and to then set into law, really important things for people in New York State. So let's keep it out of the ultimate judge hands
Yes.
and return it to the people.
Isn't it amazing? You're right, because leave it to Albany and Washington for writing something that can be so generic in a way, but have such a huge impact.
Yes.
It's scary.
It is scary. You think but isn't this their job to be able to write good law?
Yeah.
But they do it in a way that's rushed, and also in a way that's just very reactive to the culture of the day.
100%.
So let's dig into it and hold the people accountable who wrote this.
And that's again tonight at the American Legion in South Corning at 6 p.m. Before we go, how's the San Giovanni Varderno kids?
So I'm hosting a couple of awesome Italian teens at my house this week.
Yeah.
And, I've been thinking about how this forum attempts to bring people together to have civil conversation about things that are important and how hard that can be, but how rewarding it is when you break through and are able to understand one another. And in hosting Italians, we're doing like a little English, a little Italian in our house, and we're trying to make ourselves understood. Their English, of course, is much better than our Italian. But what a joy it is when you can bring people together from these different cultures and have conversation and food. I think we're gonna get some homemade pasta.
Oh,
tomorrow,
really?
actually.
Oh, that's great. I've got to say that I love when they come on the program, and they do such a good job that it's almost intimidating for me, thinking that this is their second language, and they're that good at it.
It's amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, and courageous too. These, getting on the plane, hopping over here.
No kidding. I don't think I could do it. But
thanks for bringing them in. Actually, I think that
I love it.
That's fun for them.
I'm glad. So, where's the best places to find out more about your group, Twin Tiers Family Forum?
www.twintiersfamilyforum.org.
That's pretty easy.
That's easy. And there's information about our history and our mission and about the event tonight as well. You can also sign up for our mailing list. So if you can't make it tonight, you can sign up and learn about the next event.
Do you have the next one in the works? Or?
I have it planned for late spring. Yes.
Okay.
Details to be revealed.
Okay, very nice. New York State Constitutional Amendment Prop 1 public awareness meeting tonight at 6 p.m. at the American Legion. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to our last guest, Shena Rossettie, for being on the program. And now in the studio, by popular demand, so many people are reaching out and saying, I haven't had John. Matthew, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
First of all, congratulations on running.
Thank you.
How's the process been so far? What do you think?
Interesting.
Okay.
Very fast.
That's a very political answer for you. Interesting, it is, right? Can you believe it? Early voting is, the 26th?
Yeah.
You're almost here.
My kids are already sick of going to stuff with me.
Well, they won't have to do it if you win for 10 years. That's what we got to remind people. This is a judicial interview, so it is a little bit more cut and dry. I can't ask too many specific questions, so let's start with the easy one, your background.
So, born and raised in Elmira. I went to law school down in Jacksonville, Florida, and I was one of about 10 to 15 students that graduated with a job. My job was back here at the Chemung County Public Advocate's Office, where I worked with Richard W. Rich for about 4 years.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about your experience then, because what makes you, in your mind, suited for this position of family court judge?
Experience, period. I'm in family court every day.
Okay.
I average, going back 15 years, I've been fully licensed since January of 2012.
Okay.
But I was one of the last group of students that had a temporary practice order, so I could actually practice law before I actually fully graduated and passed the bar.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I have averaged about 2 family court trials a week for the past 15 years.
Wow. So what's it like being on the ground in the family court? I mean, some people have had experience with it, some people haven't. So why is this, position so important?
So the position's so important because of the far-reaching implications you have. I mean, you're deciding custody decisions, you're deciding abuse and neglect decisions, and then you're also handling matters like juvenile delinquency petitions, dealing with a lot of young youth at a very developmental and important stage in their lives. So it's a vital necessity in the county to foster and help promote services and chances.
Sure. And what made you originally get into family court law? Why was that your choice?
My family life.
Yeah.
So growing up, I grew up, my parents divorced when I was 4.
Okay.
I know the effects that it has on people. And then likewise, the past year and a half, personally, I've been going through a divorce, and we've worked very hard and work together to not have to utilize a very overburdened and overrun system.
I'm glad you mentioned overburdened. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But what was it? Because you're obviously a busy person. Why did you decide to run for this position?
We got a new position when the legislature passed it back December last year.
Okay.
And it was a very difficult decision because even though I'm a solo practitioner, I'm the only attorney in my office, I handle about 300 cases at a time.
Wow.
50% of those are in divorce matrimonial, and then I'd say between 50 and 40 are criminal defense. You get the most, I don't want to say joy, but you get the most
satisfaction
out of handling family court cases because you meet people of all varieties. I mean, I've represented homeless individuals in family court. I've represented indigent. I've represented executives from Corning, corrections officers, police officers. You really get to meet and make friends and become friends with everybody.
Sure. And you mentioned it's a little different because of this new position. Could you explain the race for people? I know we've had your opponents on. It's one of those things where it could get glanced over if you're not paying attention, right?
Exactly.
I'm sure you've experienced that.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, what, family court? You have to run for that? So it's a 10-year term for Chemung County Family Court, and it's only family court. The position you vote, you'll have the option to vote twice. The top 2 vote getters will then get in and have the job.
For 10 years. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because for those 10 years, you can't speak on politics, but now you have to speak on politics.
We get about 9 months to a year every 10 years to jump right in and go full throttle.
That's so wild. So how's the campaign going so far?
Great.
Yeah.
A lot of positive feedback. I love talking and meeting people. That's been the most fun thing about this. Yeah. I spent 9 hours in a dunk tank at the Big Flats Community Days event, only taking a break to put my daughter on my back and run through the parade and hand out candy to everybody. So it's been a very, very fun time.
And when you talk to voters, other than the confusion surrounding the race, what do they normally say to you?
They're asking how it applies to them because a lot of people luckily and thankfully, don't have to encounter the family court system. And a lot of people don't realize that it's largely tax funded. When you're talking about assigned counsel rates and things like that, that just went up from $75 an hour to $158 about 2-3 years ago. Okay. And that's all taxpayer funds. So, wow. Looking at who's eligible, who's not eligible, who really needs an attorney, who doesn't, which is everybody. Sure. Everybody needs an attorney. Right. And that's really how you can start to foster conversations with people who don't have to go to family court ever.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, what are you focused on if you're successful come November 5th? What are your main focuses going to be for Chemung County Family Court?
The system right now is at a critical breaking point. Mm-hmm. In Chemung County, we have 2 publicly assigned offices, the public defender and public advocate. They are severely understaffed. For a while there was not really an order, but the district judge said, you can't assign cases to this office anymore, which then brought it out to all the private attorneys.
Sure.
I'm there's 3 of us that take those assigned cases. Yeah. So really trying to bring in more practitioners from out of town or from the surrounding areas, and then also reviewing cases and trying to settle cases, being more of an involved judge at first appearances and whatnot. Sure. To lower the numbers, to really give cases time. I mean, a typical family court case, especially like an abuse or neglect where your child might have been removed into foster care, takes upwards of a year.
Wow. And
it shouldn't be like that.
And what would your workload look like? Now that there's 2 positions, it's probably made things a little easier, is the hopes, right? So what's the workload going to be like?
We have no idea.
Okay.
Typical Office of Court Administration. So we also have 2 county court judges, Judge Rich and Judge Campanella, and they hear family court matters too. So what we're hearing is the 2 county court judges would get a majority of the family court cases, and then they would take overflow and things like that.
Okay. So we were talking about the campaign and how it's on. We're talking about Chemung County Family Court Judge. How's the endorsements? Has that been something that you've received?
Yes. So currently I am the only candidate out of the 3 of us that has been publicly endorsed by any unions. I was endorsed by the Chemung County Correctional Officers Association. Today, this afternoon, I go to meet with the Elmira Teachers Association. Okay. What we've been hearing a lot is from almost every other association you can imagine, PBAs, things like that. They're not, again, going to the point of
And full endorsement?
Yeah, they're not. Nobody's really talking about the race and things like that.
No, and you raise such a good point, and that's why one of the goals for this program has always been to have all the candidates on. You know, that becomes a little overwhelming, but there's such a lack of information, I think, because so many people are laser-like focused on the big one, right? The White House.
Yes.
So have you found that to be an uphill battle?
Yeah, it's really hard getting any media coverage to the races. Nobody really wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to give, and it's not just me, it's the other two candidates as well.
I'm sure.
The time of day, and it's just bizarre.
Well, I think it's because, you know, they'll see you at the parades and like that, but they think, almost like you said, I didn't even know you had to run for family court.
Right.
Right? So there's already that kind of lack of knowledge on it. And that's why I'm so glad that you and your opponents could be on the program, and I know we're going to do it again. So has campaigning been any kind of surprise for you, or did you expect it to be the way it is?
Getting the signatures was the hardest part.
Petition,
because
yeah.
they moved it into, you know, we're still in upstate New York. They moved it to the middle of winter.
It's ridiculous.
And that was the worry part. But the biggest thing that I've taken away from campaigning in general is talking with people.
Sure.
If you really talk to somebody and get to know them, you know what's important to them, and you know you get a little tiny sliver of insight into their life.
Sure.
And then to have a position where you would then take that tiny sliver to make a monumental decision is a sense of responsibility that I hope to cherish and to have.
Well, and that's a nice part of the petition process, though it is miserable. No one wants to answer their door anymore. I'll say it. You don't have to say it. I don't want to get you in trouble. But it is a tough process, but it gives you that other opportunity to speak with the people. And like you said, to your point, you learn things that are a major concern for people that you may never have even known about.
Yeah.
It's a really unique way of doing things. It's not the most fun, but it's very important. So in closing, how can people find out more?
So website's going live today, BuzzettiForJudge.com, my Facebook page, and my office. I've been encouraging everybody, talk with me, set up an appointment, find me. Most of the days, almost every day, you can find me in Chemung County Family Court or one of the surrounding areas, but stop me on the street, talk to me, stop me at Wegmans. I'm always willing to lend an ear and have a discussion.
So in closing, what would you say to voters before they either early vote or head to the booth?
Please, and I can't emphasize this enough, look at the experience. If we talk about experience from 26 years ago or 23 years ago, that's like me getting on this show and saying, Frank, back then I was getting my Eagle Scout award, right? You really need to focus at who's in the court and who's not in the court. I'm there. I had a family court trial yesterday morning, and then I went over to the other courthouse to pick a jury for a criminal defense case. I have 2 more family court trials this week. Talk to people who have been through the system or work in the system, the court officers. They know who's there. They know who's proficient and who isn't. Really focus on the experience and who hasn't and who doesn't. You can also go online to eCourts or nycourts.gov and type in a name. And you can type in that name and see all their cases they're handling in the state. Wow. You'd be surprised to know that some people have upwards of 20 pages and other people have one single entry. And that's really where the experience comes down to.
Well, Matthew, thanks so much for being on the show. I know we're going to do this again before, so I don't have to wish you good luck yet.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. I'll see you soon.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Hour number 1 of Frankly Speaking in the books. We're in hour number 2. Time flies. Wow. Busy morning this morning. Thank you to all of our guests. It is going to be similar to that from here on out until Election Day. We do have a few chosen days that I blocked off, so it can just be you and I together. Let's go through some of the comments during the last few breaks. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that this community and others are actually saving lives and helping, but we pay big tax dollars for these services, and soon it will become the duty of the people with no funding at all, just more burden for the people. That's a good point. And if you're just joining us, that's in reference to what they call themselves the Redneck Air Force, which was they took it upon themselves to help their community after the hurricane because FEMA wasn't there, even being asked or even saying, who's FEMA? So the idea was for them to get together, and much like Elon Musk was complaining about during, I think it was during the Butler rally, but the drones were stopped and they weren't allowed to deliver without kind of government sanction. To your point, yeah, when does it become, it almost seems like it's there, doesn't it? Where now it'll just be expected for the community, even though we're paying these huge tax dollars, to step up and protect their neighbors. They're going to want to do that anyway. They're going to want to help their neighbors anyway. But the fact of the matter is, it should be, with all the money that's being paid for, should still have FEMA help coming to the ground. So thank you to that point. Next up, Ken writes, can we really refer to the interviews that she, meaning Harris, is doing with Colbert, The View, Howard Stern, and call her daddy as the media? The only one that even came close to being called media was 60 Minutes. Yeah, that idea of a media blitz is kind of, I guess it's just because it's a term that's been used so often, media blitz. But yeah, I'm not really sure if you can call the podcasts and Howard Stern real media, but I think that's part of the plan. Does one with 60 Minutes, boom, good. And then the other ones, she can say that she's out there on this big campaign to have her message heard. I to your point, and I think it was the New York Post as an opinion piece, that who are you really even trying to reach with these interviews? Meaning they're already, did we freeze a minute? That they're already her fans. Okay. We might have froze for just a second. I apologize if we did. Okay, here's another comment from a viewer. Once again, I wish to thank Ken for watching for me. Yes, Ken was kind enough to watch the 60 Minutes interview. So once again, I wish to thank Ken for watching for me, says one viewer. Thank you, Ken. Also, a shout out to Shena Rossettie for making this meeting happen. So important. And if you're just joining us, that is the New York State Constitutional Amendment Prop 1 Public Awareness Meeting being held tonight. Again, being held tonight, 6 p.m. at the American Legion in South Corning. Do not miss it. I know we've had a lot of people asking questions about that prop. And if you recall, a few weeks ago, maybe even a month ago now, I went through and kind of dissected what is being talked about, what is being changed. We are going to have on some guests tomorrow. Senator Borrello is going to join us to talk about it. He's a part of the forum tonight. He's going to join us to talk about the prop. So we are going to do our best now for November. And as we were talking with Mr. Buzzetti, there is a lack of media coverage for some of these things. So this is why we're trying to make, frankly speaking, your home to find out all about the local races, because we know about the national race. We want to focus on the local, so we're better informed when we go in the voting booth, and it's not just a, 50-50 shot, I'm going to say yes or no on the prop. We have to have the information. So again, that meeting is tonight. If you are interested, at the American Legion, South Corning, 6 p.m., Bobby Ann Cox, Esquire, will be there, and New York State Senator George Borrello. And they'll tell us, quote, how Prop 1 harms families and children and why you should vote more. Find out more at twintiersfamilyforum.org. Okay. Wow, look at all these waves and comments coming in. My goodness. We will get to all, well, thank you. We'll get to all of your comments as best as we can do coming up after the next break. I know I ran long. That kind of fell wonky this morning, so we went a little early with Matthew so that he wouldn't have to just sit here and stare at me, which is always awkward for a guest to have to do. Okay. To a point made yesterday on the program where people were concerned about voters with these hurricanes, I should say, having the opportunity to vote. Trump believes his supporters in the storm-ravaged South will turn out on Election Day, quote, even if they have to crawl to a voting booth. Republican areas got hit very hard, the former president acknowledged in an interview with Fox News' Laura Ingraham that aired yesterday. Many people are dead. They don't even know what is going to be in terms of number, hundreds of missing. I believe they're going to go out and vote if they have to crawl to a voting booth. And that's what's happening, said the former president. Yes, he was on Laura Ingraham's show yesterday. Trump noted that his daughter-in-law, Republican National Committee co-chair Laura Trump, is part of a team making sure voters get to the polls in places hard hit by the hurricanes. Laura is working on it. Other people are working on it. We're trying to make it convenient for them, but they just lost their house. We're going to try to make it convenient for them to go out and vote. We're doing very well in certain areas that we weren't expected to do. Virginia, we're doing well. We're doing well all over. I think we're going to do great in North Carolina because the response has been so bad to the hurricane. This response has been horrific. Can't go to an update. Got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Look at that beautiful view of historic Market Street. Looks a little foggy out there, a little chilly. And we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on said Market Street. Let's go to some comments from viewers. Thanks, Frank, for bringing in Miss Rossettie on Proposition 1. Until you brought it up, I had not heard of it. I bless Miss Rossetti for being so calm about it. We watched the segment twice, and I'm sputtering mad once I went to the New York State site and read the actual prop. It is shocking what they are trying to pull here. Boys playing girl sports, parents losing rights in children's gender or abortion decisions. It is all here in one foul swoop. Yes, I'm glad that she could be on the program. We learned about it kind of last minute, so we wanted to make sure that we had her on. Again, that is tonight at 6 p.m. at the American Legion in South Corning. All right, next up, ask yourself how corrupt the government is. This is from a different viewer. Also, how much they're in cahoots with insurance companies, whether it's property or health. FEMA have declared most of what has happened in North Carolina as mudslides before they have even arrived or investigated locations. Therefore, insurance companies won't have to pay for flood insurance. I bet rates still continue to go up, though. Don't ever believe the government is there for you. What was Reagan's old line? I'm here from the government, and I'm here to help. Something to that extent. That's the scariest words in the English language. Guess till you experience it in real life, your beliefs will remain whatever they are. Well, thank you for those comments. Some other comments coming in that I missed when we came back. We'll get to them later on. Hey, here's an update from yesterday. Some have called it an early win for Donald Trump. We brought this story to you yesterday in upstate New York. Supporters of the former president won a last-minute court victory, allowing them to illuminate a 100-foot-wide Vote for Trump sign, despite their city's efforts to block the massive political endorsement. It was a major company that had this put up. Some had speculated because I think the mayor was a Democrat or some of the council were a Democrat. They stopped it. Anthony Costantino, the CEO of manufacturing company Sticker Mule, who has a political action committee supporting the Republican presidential nominee, will move forward with a rally Monday evening to officially unveil the sign that sits atop his firm's building. We're all set up to light it up, he said, that the 2 hours before the 7 p.m. event. Lawyers for Amsterdam, a municipality of about 18,000, some 35 miles northwest of Albany, claimed in a lawsuit last week that the signage violated city code and could be a safety hazard by distracting passing drivers. Montgomery County Supreme Court Justice Rebecca Slezak has issued a ruling that would have barred the giant letters from being lit until at least a Tuesday morning hearing. But the judge lifted the temporary restraining order in the nick of time after hearing oral arguments on the case ending at around 5:30 p.m. Monday. Quote, my lawyers told me that I am within my rights to go ahead as planned, Constantino said. His lawyer and general counsel for Sticker Mule confirmed that the judge agreed to vacate her prior order on the grounds that the sign is sufficiently far from a highway and doesn't pose a danger. Quote, all I know is tonight the party is on and the lighting will occur and there's no court order prohibiting the lighting and display of the sign. So it's obviously a nice victory for Anthony and his team. It is quite a sign. If I'm able to, I'll try to put it up on the screen. I meant to have that propped up and ready to go so you'd be able to see it. But I'll try to do that maybe in the next break. Okay, here, last week or 2 weeks ago when we brought to you the bakery that was having political problems because they had the audacity to have Trump cookies along with Harris cookies. It's something they've been doing for years and years and years. And it's to kind of pick in a fun way who you think is going to be president. And you buy the cookies and everybody's happy. And at the end of the day, they see how they were. And then we hear from these people that they call Nostradamus and all of these forecasters who he's got it right 10 out of the last 12 elections. And you say, well, that's too wrong. Well, there is an Ohio bakery, according to Cindy Adams from the New York Post. There's an Ohio bakery that's predicted every presidential election since 1984 and predicted it correctly. Wow. Cincinnati. So it's the fourth generation's Buskin Bakery. Owner Dan Buskin. He appeared nice. His bakery appears nice. Cindy Adams has such a weird style in her writing. But he said, my bakery's predicted every presidential election since 1984 and never been wrong. We're famous for predictions. It started in 1982 with a Super Bowl cookie poll. Baking for each team, we then counted how many were sold. In 1984's Reagan and Mondale race, we did another poll. We've since correctly predicted just about every election. Well, just about or what? I'm confused now. But I do find it interesting. That's a good one to start on, Reagan Mondale. That was kind of an easy one. So where are we at? Buskin said Trump has a tremendous lead. So sold so far, Trump cookies were 9,827. Harris, 3,131. And for some independent, nobody, smiley face, crummy candidate, grabbed 599. Now, I can't recall if this is the same one that we had brought to you, but I don't remember the record being that stellar. But that's where we stand with the important news that you need to know this morning. Now, Trump did erase a deficit to tie Harris among likely voters in the aftermath of the VP debate. A lot of people speculating that the VP debate had a little more importance than in years past, that it actually is going to be the deciding factor for some people, seeing kind of the lack of information and the whole Tiananmen Square answer and like that from Walz, and Vance not being the caricature, and we talked about this with the former congressman last week, not being the caricature the media had presented him as. So as many people, unfortunately, many people, that was their first experience seeing really J.D. Vance not through the media's perspective, not through the lens of maybe social media or what their Democrat friends said, this idea that he's weird, and they saw a cool, calm, and collected J.D. Vance. So this could wake up some people and say, wait a minute, this was not what the media has been telling us. So it's pretty interesting. If it's going to have more play than it normally does. But I do think there was a lot of people that night seeing J.D. Vance for the first time thinking, well, wait a minute, I may not be crazy about Trump, but this is a guy that seems level-headed and someone that we could support. That's in the past. Now, they always say it doesn't matter. I think I knew a lot of people that voted for McCain, Palin, because of Palin. And I think, there's those in the past that said they liked that Biden was picked by Obama because it was kind of someone with experience, whatever you think of that experience, but with experience, when Biden only had, 2 years as a sitting senator. But going back to this poll, with less than a month to go before Election Day, former President Donald Trump has erased a 4-point deficit among likely voters to tie Harris, according to a new poll. And always take a poll with a grain of salt, but just passing it along to you. They each received 47% support among the Yahoo News YouGov survey. That's a significant shift from September, which found Harris ahead of Trump 49-45. Yahoo News YouGov is one of the first pollsters to release the results of a survey following last week's vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and, of course, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. A plurality, 41% of U.S. adults who watched the CBS News Forum felt that Vance was the winner, which I'm still surprised that number is so low, while just 32% said Walz got the better of the exchanges, and 19% concluded it was a draw. Both VP contenders got similar scores when voters were asked if they were weird, with 36% saying that about Walz and 38% about Vance. Walz has pioneered the weird attack on Vance right after Harris tapped him to be her running mate on August 6th. Okay, we got to take a break. I do have something that's a little disturbing here, and this is why I say, take all polls with a grain of salt, because it can be used for many different things. It can be used to break somebody's momentum. It can be used to discourage you from voting. It can also be used to say, wow, your person's winning so much that there's no sense going out. They've historically manipulated polls to suit their needs. We know that. Very rarely accurate at the end of the day. So it is. So this one I find very interesting. And I'm going to bring it up to you and get your opinion when we come back. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. Frankly Speaking's Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting. Look at that beautiful. It almost looks like a painting. We are broadcasting from the beautiful Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Okay, so I received a couple of comments during the break. First off, there were some waves. I got those. Oh, okay, yeah, I don't have it up. I didn't copy and paste it. But this viewer's asking about the proposal. Now, tonight there is the meeting about the New York State Constitutional Amendment, Proposition 1 it's called. So when you go in on Election Day or early voting or however you choose to vote, there'll be an option to vote yes or vote no for the Constitutional Amendment, Prop 1. Now, tonight's hearing is at the American Legion. It starts at 6 p.m. And Bobby Ann Cox, Esquire, and New York State Senator George Borrello, they want you to vote no. They believe it's to vote no. This is, and the person asked for specifics, and I think that's only fair. We are going to have experts about this on the program, but I will read you just quickly what the proposal is, the change. The change, I don't know how to highlight it specifically, but No person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws of this state or any subdivision thereof. No person shall, because of race, color, now this is added with a prop, ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, and then creed, which was already in there, religion, which was already in there, and then now this new addition, or sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. Then it ends, be subjected to any discrimination in his or her, their civil rights by any other person or by any firm, corporation, or institution, or by the state or any agency or subdivision of the state pursuant to law. Nothing in this section shall invalidate or prevent the adoption of any law, regulation, program, or practice that is designed to prevent or dismantle discrimination on the basis of a characteristic listed in this section, nor shall any characteristic listed in this section be interpreted to interfere with, limit, or deny the civil rights of any person based upon any other characteristic identified in this section. So I know I did this once before. We're going to do it again. The legalese that's involved here gets a little wonky, but that is what the proposition actually is. You can find it online if you want to just search to see it for yourself, maybe a little bit better than me reading it to you. It's Prop 1 for the New York State Constitution. Again, if you're interested in that forum tonight, it's at the American Legion at 6 p.m. Okay, how am I doing on time here? I'm doing good. This is the, I guess, quote-unquote poll that makes me nervous. A cultural research center at Arizona Christian University, they did a study that found that approximately 104 million people under the, quote, people of faith umbrella are not expected to vote this election. That's 41 million Christians and 32 million of whom regularly go to church. Just over half of interviewees, 51%, in a cultural research center at Arizona Christian University study, who identified as people of faith, responded that they are likely to vote in the presidential election between Trump and Harris. The people of faith label is given to those who identify with their recognized religions such as Christianity, Judaism, Mormonism, and Islam. The study found that the approximately 104 million people under the people of faith umbrella are not expected to vote this election, and again, including 41 million born-again Christians and 32 million who regularly go to church. Now, if these numbers hold up, that would signal a huge trouble, well, depending, but huge trouble for former President Trump. So I just mentioned that because we try to give you all the information here on the program. Now, we talked quickly. Ken was kind enough to send in his recap of what he saw from 60 Minutes. Kamala Harris whiffed on an attempt to explain how she'd help boost small businesses and repeatedly deflected when asked about the historic flood of migrants crossing illegally into the U.S. since she's been vice president in a 60 Minutes interview that aired Monday. So, again, asking somewhat tough questions. She was not prepared. That's why I think she does this one-and-done kind of difficult interview and then goes to The View, as is already stated in her quote-unquote media blitz, The View, Howard Stern, Stephen Colbert, etc. Harris was unable to describe how her fiscal policies would work, quote, in the real world, including by passing both chambers of what is likely to be a divided Congress. Bill Whitaker accused her of being unrealistic. My plan is about saying that when you invest in small businesses, you invest in the middle class, and you strengthen America's economy, Harris told Whitaker. Small businesses are part of the backbone of America's economy. So you've got a lot of kind of political cliches there, for lack of a better word. That's when Whitaker interrupted, saying, "Pardon me, Madam Vice President. The question was, how are you going to pay for it?" Harris said, "Well, one of the things I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes." Oof, going to the greatest hits. "It's not right that teachers and nurses and firefighters are paying a higher tax rate than billionaires and the biggest corporations. And I plan on making that fair." So Whitaker, again, interjecting, say, "But we're dealing with the real world here. How are you going to get this through Congress?" She said, when you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about because their constituents know exactly what I'm talking about. Their constituents are those firefighters and teachers and nurses. She did something there that the media is very good at doing. Many people behind closed doors are saying X, Y, or Z. I don't know. Does she really believe at the end of the day that she can get through this? Get this through with this kind of dumping of more money? Harris's economic agenda, which includes increasing the amount in tax deductions offered to startups to $50,000, is estimated to add $5.3 trillion to the national debt, according to a nonpartisan analyst by the Committee for Responsible Federal Government, federal budget released Monday, even while raising taxes on corporations, the ultra-wealthy, and others to the tune of $4.25 trillion. Now, as you are probably aware, the top 1% income brackets shoulder 46% of the nation's tax burden at a current taxation rate of 37%. The average tax rate for teachers, nurses, and firefighters based on those occupations' median income is 22%, but could be as low as 12% for married couples and heads of the household. Now, they've criticized kind of her word salads, where she goes kind of to that repetition, that cadence, or that repetition. Like if you recall that one interview where she said holistic over and over. So it didn't seem as well. And she also was asked about immigration and talking about passing that bill in Congress. There was a historic flood of undocumented immigrants coming across the border for 3 years of your administration, Whitaker noted. Arrivals quadrupled from the last year of President Trump. Was it a mistake to loosen the immigration policy as much as you did? Harris called illegal immigration a long-standing problem, again not answering the question, and argued the solutions are at hand, and from day one, literally, we have been offering solutions. Was it a mistake to kind of allow that flood to happen in the first place, Whitaker pressed? And Harris argued, the policies that we have been proposing are about fixing a problem, not promoting a problem. But the numbers did quadruple under your watch, Whitaker went back in, to which Harris responded, the numbers today, because of what we have done, we have cut the flow of illegal immigration by half. I'm sure Whitaker is probably going to get a little pushback from this. Harris has not been forced to, well, it's very much the Walz scenario, right? Where Walz gave that debate and wasn't prepared for a quote-unquote hostile environment, a debate-type environment. So he wasn't up to his A game, and that's why you had the awkwardness and nervousness. I think you have the same here. This is really one of her only serious interviews probably until Election Day, and she hasn't had that many the whole campaign. So I think she's not prepared with those. I don't know how, they haven't practiced, but not prepared with those answers. She said, I've been traveling our country, and I've been listening to folks and seeking what is possible in terms of common ground. I believe in building consensus. We're diverse people, geographically, regionally, in terms of where we are and our backgrounds. And what the American people do want is that we have leaders who can build a consensus. It's not a bad thing, Harris said, of making compromises on policy, as long as you don't compromise your values. Meanwhile, Democrat vice presidential nominee Tim Walz acknowledged that Harris has probably disagreed with the way he's embellished stories from his past. She said, Tim, you need to be a little more careful on how you say things, whatever it might be. I think folks who know who I am, I think they know the difference between someone expressing emotion, telling a story, getting a date wrong, rather than a pathological liar like Donald Trump. I think I can. I will own up to being a knucklehead at times. But the folks closest to me know that I keep my words. That was Tim Walz in regards to the numerous fabrications in his, I guess, biography or autobiography. When we come back from the break, we're going to take a look at what CNN thought were the biggest takeaways, because we give you all sides and all positions, what the biggest takeaways were. And most importantly, I want to hear from you. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Thank you so much to Boss Security for that beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street, Corning. From a viewer, Frank, can you please mention the address of what American Legion, where Miss Rossettie will be tonight in regards to proposal number 1? Okay, great question. It's at the American Legion in South Corning. I don't have the exact address. I assume it has one, but that's what the flyer says. It's the American Legion over in South Corning, and that's at 6 p.m. tonight. It's New York State Constitutional Amendment Prop 1 public awareness meeting. I guess we just all know it locally as the American Legion in South Corning. So I don't really know what the exact, let's see. Okay, there it is, 8 River Road. So 8 River Road in South Corning, and that again is tonight at 6 p.m. Hear from Bobby Ann Cox, Esquire, and New York State Senator George Borrello on how Prop 1 harms families and children and why you should vote no. Vote no to Prop 1 and protect children and parental rights, women's sports and spaces, freedoms of speech and religion. If you want to find out more information or you want to find out about the organization putting this on, go to twintiersfamilyforum.org, twintiersfamilyforum.org. Okay, what did CNN think were the big takeaways from Harris's one-on-one interview? Can you imagine that a presidential candidate, one that has a very unique story, obviously Biden drops out, so she never had the primary. She didn't have to go through that kind of scrutiny that a normal presidential candidate does. Can you imagine then that it's actually news, it's as the former congressman was saying last week on the program, that it's actually news that the Democrat nominee is giving interviews, that it's a big deal, that it's noteworthy. Now, in the past, even with Trump, even with Biden was a little weaker because they had the whole basement strategy, but I think Harris has taken it to a new level. So kind of the shock, and that's why CNN did the 5 takeaways from Harris's one-on-one interview with 60 Minutes. Harris says Congress must act on border security. That was their big takeaway. Pressed on the record numbers of crossing and whether more action should have been done and taken sooner, Harris refused to answer, focusing instead on recent action that has resulted in a drastic drop in crossing and putting the onus on Congress to act. Another was no one-on-one meeting with Putin. Ukraine must have a say in the future of Ukraine, she said. Harris said that there will be no success in ending that war without Ukraine and the UN Charter participating in what that success would look like, but that she would not have a one-on-one meeting with Putin. Next, Harris and Cheney's alliance was on display. I hope that if you said to me 4 years ago, our Constitution is going to be under threat and it's going to be crucial for the parties to come together and to support Vice President Harris because she'll defend the rule of law, I know I would have said that's exactly what I'll do, Cheney said. When asked if she had imagined to be campaigning around Cheney 4 years ago, Harris said that'd be great. She's really diplomatic. Is Cheney really a story? Is Liz Cheney really this kind of story, or does it just fit such a perfect narrative that the media loves? Because put aside the fact that she's a Republican that, badmouths Republicans, which the media loves, and of course Democrats would love. But did Liz Cheney have some type of power that I'm not familiar with, or some type of popularity that I'm not familiar with, that this endorsement needs to be the major focus of this campaign? Now, I'm shocked that her father endorsed, of course. But notice the turn in the media now. Their hatred for Dick Cheney almost now completely forgotten. And remember, they said some very nasty things about Liz Cheney, too, until she became a maverick and started bad-mouthing fellow Republicans. Next up on the 5 takeaways, Walz says Harris told him to be more careful with his words. I had mentioned that one already. And finally, Harris slams Trump's decision to drop out of the 60 Minutes interview. Now, why that is a story is also, I think, troubling in today's media cycle. That this could be her one interview, and you can write a glowing piece about the fact that she did a one-on-one interview on 60 Minutes and how important this is. She is a presidential candidate. She should be getting out and speaking to the voters. But then to criticize the guy who has been in front of the media, hostile media, all sorts of media. If he's not going to give your viewers the ability to have a meaningful, thoughtful conversation, question and answer with you, then watch his rallies, Harris said. You're going to hear conversations that are about himself and all of his personal grievances, and that you will not hear is anything about you, the listener. You will not hear about how he is going to try to bring the country together, find common ground. And Bill, that is why I believe in my soul and heart the American people are ready to turn the page. She gets better when it's a talking point she continues using on a regular basis. But it was interesting how she dodged the question on whether or not it was a mistake for the Biden administration to go soft on the border, for 3 years, a little over 3 years, and then trying to make that change as it neared Election Day. But dodging that question repeatedly. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Beautiful fall morning, a crisp fall morning as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I nearly forgot I had planned this, and then I forgot to. This is a picture of that Trump sign that caused quite a stir in Amsterdam. You can tell that's a large building, and that is a large lighted sign. So I wanted to show you a picture, if at all possible. I think there was one other. That's all right. There was one before it, but I don't know if I can. Yeah, it'll be too difficult. So there we go. Back to the program. Harris said candidates must earn voter support despite skipping the primaries before becoming the Democrat nominee. A quarter of registered voters still say they don't know you, they don't know what makes you tick, said Bill Whitaker during that sit-down interview. Why do you think that is? What's the disconnect? Now, I think many of us would know it's because of the lack of press conferences, lack of media, other than her rallies, in the one debate. It's an election, Bill, and I take it seriously that I have to earn everyone's vote. This is an election for President of the United States. No one should be able to take for granted that they can just declare themselves a candidate and automatically receive support. You have to earn it, and that's what I intend to do. The Democrat Party has been accused of let me try to take a step back. The Democrat Party has been accused by critics of anointing Harris as the party's nominee after Biden abruptly ended his re-election bid following the first debate against the former president. In response to the criticism, Nancy Pelosi said the party's presidential nominating process was open and Harris won it despite the absence of any such contest. So she said you have to earn it, and that's what I intend to do. But of course, again, not giving the press conferences, not getting going to media outlets. I mean, this big media blitz she's on, that's the toughest one she had right there was 60 Minutes. And you got to give Whitaker some credit, even though they focused on Trump turning down the 60 Minutes interview. He did do some pushback, which she's not used to. If you recall, I think that's what threw Walz off so much during the vice presidential debate when they actually had a follow-up question, actually holding them to, hey, that wasn't the question, this is the question. When that was the case, that was with the Tiananmen Square issue. It threw him completely off, and you could see by that mini meltdown, if you will. Also, another takeaway, I guess, on the 60 Minutes is that we now learn that Kamala Harris owns a Glock semi-automatic pistol, which we know the administration has been critical of semi-automatic pistols in the past, but a hard left turn here, said Whitaker. But you recently surprised people when you said that you are a gun owner and that someone came into your house that they would get shot. Harris said that is not the first time I've talked about it. So Whitaker said, what kind of gun do you own and when and why did you get it? She said, I have a Glock and I've had it for quite some time. And I mean, look, Bill, my background is in law enforcement, and so there you go. So Whitaker, shocked like most people, have you ever fired it? Harris said, yes, of course I have. At a shooting range, yes, of course I have. And as I mentioned, Walz saying on 60 Minutes that in your debate with Senator J.D. Vance, this was the question he was asked, you said I'm a knucklehead at times. And I think you were referring, I was going to say referencing, but I combined them, referring to the time that you said that you were in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square unrest when you were not. Is that the kind of misrepresentation? Isn't that more than just being a knucklehead? Walz said, I think folks know who I am. And I think they know the difference between someone expressing emotion, telling a story, getting a date wrong, rather than a pathological liar like Donald Trump. I will own up to being a knucklehead at times, but the folks closest to me know that I keep my word. So are they going to try to make knucklehead a thing, like a term that they're going to use a lot? So this goes back to a question I kind of posed to you earlier on in the program. And it's a really good piece from the New York Post. Yeah, I have time. As Vice President Harris enters the last month of the 2024 race for the White House, she's proving she either won't or can't reach out to any persuadable voters. In her Monday night interview with CBS, it looked like can't. Bill Whitaker asked a series of perfectly reasonable questions, and she delivered gibberish. So not it won't, she just can't. Is Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu just ignoring the White House? Harris offered a convoluted statement on our advocacy that brought some results she and President Biden wanted without naming one of them. Now how she's going to pay for a spending plan? Tax the rich. She says Whitaker retorts, in the real world, how will you get it through Congress? She said firefighters and teachers and nurses will demand it. Whitaker didn't look convinced, and it's hard to imagine who would be. And then the interview at least aimed at a general audience. What swing voter does she expect to reach from softball interviews with Call Her Daddy, Howard Stern, Stephen Colbert, The View. Now, the Call Her Daddy audience is almost entirely young women, a demographic Democrats have been crushing for years. And even then, some listeners felt insulted by the propaganda. It's also hard to see how you'll gain any more among the rich white dudes, average household income $160,000, who still listen to Stern. And anyone turning into The View or Colbert these days is already on her side. Is she just trying to get them to actually bother showing up to vote? Harris needs to win undecideds in the Sun Belt and blue wall swing states, but nothing she says even seems intended to convince them. They want some sign of a difference from the Biden-Harris years. How will she help families get back what they lost to Biden inflation? Why won't her mega spending plans bring Kamala-flation? What will she do to stop the millions jumping the border? Democrats won't win by simply insisting they care about the little guy they've punished for the past 4 years. They need to show a new vision. But whenever Harris talks, she struggles to show any vision at all. Going through the motions is a bizarre strategy in the final weeks of an election, but maybe it's the best Kamala Harris can do. Yes, because at The View and places like that, it will be very friendly. Stephen Colbert will make jokes. Well, obviously she'll have jokes prepared, but will make jokes at Trump's expense, and she'll get the laugh, and she'll look personable. And as Kristen Flint, got to take a break. Last break of today's edition. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The beautiful view from the Frankly Speaking roof cam is brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we wrap up today's edition. We got some last minute waves in. I appreciate that. A comment from a viewer to the current administration. It's no longer about the American people. It's all about liberty and justice for them. Thank you very much. Kristen Fleming said, what a joke. Kamala Harris avoids substantive interviews in favor of that podcast. And I don't want to go through some of the graphic things said on that podcast in the past, or obviously on Howard Stern's show and the like. But Harris' strategy is to create an illusion that she's digging in. And all these friendly, airy chats provide cover and drown out her lack of depth. We need her on more shows like 60 Minutes, where Bill Whitaker pressed the VP on her economic plan, saying what we're all thinking, quote, but we're dealing with the real world here. All right. Oh, a couple quick things. Just a weird, just out of the left field here. Did you see that Mega Millions tickets are now going to go for $5? With a promise of bigger jackpots and higher odds, Mega Millions tickets will more than double in cost next April, from $2 to $5 a pop. Lottery officials announced Monday, adding that the new price tag will come with higher jackpots. Okay. What, the $1 billion hasn't been enough? Okay. That caught my attention. One last thing before we go and make some last minute housekeeping announcements. The Hurricanes reveal a rudderless White House and an inept Harris flaws that you can find at the New York Post. You'd think the two key swing states with a total of 30 electoral votes would receive overwhelming resources and attention from the party in power after a catastrophe of this magnitude. Instead, the Biden-Harris administration's incompetence, indifference, and weakness on a host of issues, both domestic and foreign, could signal the Democrats' defeat. Now, a couple quick announcements here. Let's go through them because I want to wrap things up. Again, thank you to Shena Rossettie for being on the program, telling us about her organization, twintiersfamilyforum.org. Find out more, twintiersfamilyforum.org. But also thank not only her for being on the program, but for putting together this public awareness meeting, because there's so many questions, and we are going to have Senator Borrello on tomorrow to talk about Proposition 1. But this is a New York State constitutional amendment, Prop 1 public awareness meeting. And it's tonight on River Road in South Corning at the American Legion. So don't miss that. That is tonight at 6 p.m. Also, I want to thank Matthew Buzzetti for being on the program this morning. He's running for Chemung County Family Court, and that means we've had all three candidates on. Now, come Election Day, you'll be able to vote for two of the three candidates, and I will give you a little refresher. We're going to have each of the candidates on before November 5th, just so you have another look at them and where they stand. Though, again, the judicial races are a little bit wonky when it comes to what I can ask and what I can't, but I still think it was I still think it's very informative and important to hear where they stand. Tomorrow on the program, we're going to be talking with Mariel Anderson. She is going to be at Marriage Music's on Sunday for a benefit for flood victims in need. She's also was a good friend with Dwayne Eddy, so I'm going to be talking with her a little bit about that. So that'll be on tomorrow's program. We have others that I just don't have in my calendar. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. Senator Borrello, Mariel Anderson, so many more guests coming up before November 5th. But thank you to everybody who joined us. Have a great day, everyone, and we will be back tomorrow morning, bright and early at 6 a.m. I look forward to it already. Have a great day, everyone. We will see you tomorrow morning.